So in this second example, I am playing with the black pieces against a strong grandmaster, Jose Gascon from Spain. And I was playing a blitz game. And this game was, wow, I can't talk now. This game featured slightly different ideas than the Magnus game in Study 1. But still, obviously, we will get into the whole making a plan stuff. So I played the Scandinavian defense. Opponent played knight c3. I played queen a5. This has all been seen before. Knight f6, bishop f5. Opponent traded pieces with me. And we're not really getting into the planning stage yet. You could, but the truth is you kind of have to know your openings. You know, I have my queen on a5. I know that I develop my bishop. Not like that. That's illegal. But like this. I'll play c6 to swing my queen back. Knight d7, and I need to castle, right? And I'm kind of also monitoring my opponent's moves. Bishop b4. Oftentimes you will trade the bishop for the knight. That's the way I like to play the Scandinavian. Bishop g5. So normally I would castle, but if I castle, my opponent is going to open my position and probably move this knight out of the way. And I just don't see a reason to allow that. I don't really want that. So before I castle, I anticipate his plan and I play knight bd7. So we're already kind of in the stage of like opening to middle game, understanding both sides' plans. Opponent plays knight e4. Already a tough moment. Like, maybe I should have played this a bit faster. What do I do here? Do I take on e4, queen e4, and then castle? Maybe not, because when the queen arrives on that square, it actually attacks this pawn. That's the stuff you gotta realize. Go, okay, but if I castle right now, then we know that my opponent is gonna try to open up the position. He's going to try to damage my structure. Am I okay with that? Alternatively, I can move my knight, or I can come back and defend my knight even more, because now this bishop loses its entire purpose. The purpose was to trade and damage the structure. Maybe I can come back to e7. All these things are on the table. In the game, I decided bringing the bishop back to e7 was the right thing to do. I haven't castled yet, but I don't want to trade and help my opponent. That's from the trading chapter. There's no point exchanging pieces and only benefiting my opponent. So even though I've moved my piece twice, here and here, so did my opponent, this and this. And if I can trade a few pieces, I'm going to be pretty happy. So my opponent took. Okay, now here it's a tough decision. I mean, it's very tough. Bishop or knight, you take with either. That's completely fine with me. I chose to take with the pawn. So, but you might ask me, well, Levy, didn't you just say pawn takes f6 is bad? No. Rewind the video. That's literally what I said, right? Nope. I said pawn takes f6 is bad if you castle. I didn't say pawn takes f6 is bad. Pawn takes f6 is bad if the king is already here. If the king is in the center, it means my plan is to kick out his bishop, and I'm going to castle the other way. That's my plan. I deliberately open that side of the board because I'm going to move, and by the way, I have to move my queen, and since I'm going to start an attack on this side, I'm rotate my queen over to the other side, and I'm going to go long. Now here my opponent played d5. He tried to take advantage of the fact that I'm not castled yet, and he wants to open up my king. You know, my opponent could have also played a move like rook e1 or something. He could have played queen b3, targeting my pawn, but my next move is castles. It's very clear I'm not going to be castling to the short side. He does this. You might ask, isn't that just a free pawn? Yes. But let's say I take it doesn't really matter whether I take with the queen or the pawn. The only difference is in the sense that I will win the pawn regardless. But remember, my idea is to attack. If I trade the queens, I probably will not be able to attack. And the other thing I have to realize is if I open the center, my opponent will go here and I will not be able to castle. So if I take like this, my opponent's idea is to do this and disallow me from moving my king. That will be a serious problem. For the cost of a pawn, this is absolutely worth it, because I am going to be in serious trouble here with my bishop. So this is the plan of d5. I now have options. I can ignore this and castle anyway. I can push my pawn to leave the pawns in the center. In the game, I chose to castle. Because again, I can take with the queen. This still leads to this. I now no longer have an attack. I probably need to play a move like king to d8. And maybe I'll be fine, but why even deal with this? Okay, now I have to desperately hang on with my pawn. Also, my structure is really bad now. It wouldn't have been bad if I kept everything together. So I decided to castle. Because after pawn takes, I'm fine, and now my king is out of the center of the board. Opponent played c4. Another moment. Do I take? What do I do? What's my next order of business? Do I just add a rook to the file? Does this move threaten anything? I don't think so. On the other hand, there is a rook and a queen here. So rather than attacking over here, I could move my knight and, for instance, attack the queen and then take the pawn. And actually, I think I'm doing quite all right. So in the game, I chose rook g8. Was the plan of knight c5 good? Potentially, yes. Absolutely. I mean, this looks very natural. Why I didn't play that move is because I thought my opponent would go queen a3. You see, my move blocked my bishop. I cannot move my knight. I'm pinned. And I have to deal with this. So it's important that before you play a move, this is a huge mistake intermediate and beginner players make. They want to make a move that moves a piece and attacks a piece and just looks like a good move. But they don't ever think, where's the opponent going to go? Is the opponent going to just hang the queen? No. And it is very hard in this position to visualize that when you put the knight there, the queen cannot move there. Right? Like, or rather, it can move there. Many people would think it can't because if white did this, black would just take. But it's hard to realize that there. And how quickly the game can turn around. Look, king b8, bishop b4. Oh my gosh. Maybe not even bishop b4, although that is the best move, but just b4. I mean, just starting an attack. Right? You accidentally play too passively. Suddenly it's takes, e5. I mean, your knight is just stranded on the edge of the board. What happened? So this stuff can happen very quickly, and I just chose rook g8. My opponent played king h1, which is a natural move. Again, I have multiple options, but I decided slide the bishop forward one square. This is under fire, and that's under fire. I now have a lot of pieces staring at the two pawns in front of my opponent's king. Visually, position looks very nice for black. Now, what am I thinking white is going to do? Probably b4, c5, right? But I don't see much else. I really don't see a whole lot else. My opponent played g3, still constantly acknowledging my threats, not vice versa. This is under more pressure now. That has a little bit less defense. Now, to continue the attack, I can maybe trade knights. I don't know if that's good. I can bring my rook up and add more pressure. But I play knight c5 now. Why did I play knight c5 now? Because the knight needs to be defended by the queen. A move ago, it didn't need to be defended by the queen. So the queen could do all of this, right? And my opponent ended up actually playing passively, and now I played pawn takes d5. Finally, why am I ready to take now? Because after something like c d5, queen d5, this is a very different winning of a pawn. Several moves earlier, if I had won that pawn, my king would have been in the center. Not anymore. And you may ask, why is my opponent not playing something like pawn takes e6? I think that does more harm than good. I think knight e5. And they're sort of running into my own pieces here. I mean, I just have a monster attack here on white. So my opponent decided that d5 was an overextension and just loses the pawn. So now my opponent's down a pawn with loose pieces. Rook e8 is on the way. Knight e4 is on the way. My opponent plays rook d1. Okay, so the idea is to move the bishop and attack my rook. Except none of these moves actually create serious threats. Also, I can take that pawn. What do I want to do? If I take that pawn, my opponent will probably play rook a1 and try to get in over here. Do I want that? I mean, it might be fine, but do I really want that? Or should I just turn my attention toward the queen? What do? I play queen takes a2. I decide that even though my opponent can get in over here, it's worth it. We're going to see. Right? Queen takes a2, and rook a1 was the move that was played in the game, and we continued on this path, and so on and so forth. I went on to convert the position, but this is an example of live action blitz game planning. I think this game was like 60, 70 moves long. I decided not to include it in its entirety, but these are all the decisions that you have to come up with as you play the game. So for instance, queen a2, rook a1, and now you can ask, is queen b2 a thing? Like, do I want to take all the pawns? If I take this pawn, there might be this. Is this too much? Like, what is the limit of pressure on your own position? And maybe I shouldn't have played queen takes a2. Maybe I should have played queen to c6, been a pawn up, keep going with the pressure, keep attacking. Maybe that would have been the easiest way to play. Or you have to decide, should I trade queens? Should I try to play an endgame? I mean, I'm up a pawn after all, but the pawns are not so good, right? This is what chess is all about. This is all of the things that go into a live middle game of coming out of the opening and going, oh, I see, if I castle, he wants to open up my king, right? Okay, so I'm going to come back. I'm not going to damage, but I will damage my structure as long as I can castle queenside. So making plans that tie your position together, that make sense, that understand what the opponent wants to do as well, improving your pieces like this, rook g8, bishop d6, slowly, without doing something completely nuts. This was an example of how I handled the position against the Spanish Grandmaster, and there was a lot of different elements here, from castling to opening up the king. If you castle, right, castling queenside versus short side castling, how to properly craft an attack, while also being able to switch plans and understanding if the opponent's going to give pawns away to kind of deflect you off the attack, well, you could take some pawns, but understanding the risk for the opponent as well, right? Like, if you take the pawn, is the risk tolerance for yourself too low, too high? Is there counterplay involved? Chess is hard. So there's a lot of elements here, and really, like, you got to start somewhere, right? You have to start this process of understanding how to come up with ideas, analyze them, evaluate them, and you are going to do that process incorrectly. You're going to come up with two plans. They're both bad, but you're going to play one of them, and you're going to only learn that it's bad later. It's better to start anticipating what your opponent's best moves are before they actually play them on the board and surprise you with them.